working in the HR industry, because I have an HR background, and seeing what's going on from an employment perspective and the jobs paradigm and what's going on when it comes to these companies and how they're hiring and who they're hiring and pretty much the HR side and these HR directors and how they view their employees and listening to them, it's pretty bleak because, they talk about people like they're nothing but an employee number. And it's just like, people just come and go when it comes to companies today. And there's really no kind of job security. And, one can, you can own your own land and you can, do all of these things. But at the end of the day, if you're depending on somebody else to give you a paycheck, you're kind of still sort of stuck in the job paradigm. You're still dependent on somebody else for your livelihood. And what I like about this guy, Fabian for Liberty, is he really talks about and he really brings home the point of the need to become more self-sufficient when it comes to even, what you depend on in terms of your income base and income diversification. But let's see what he has to say.
Today, where I talk about some of the things I'll be covering in this video, the scary future of the job paradigm. Many of you know that I think I've maybe coined the term job paradigm. It's a dated model. Used to work in the 20th century. We're in the 21st century now, not working out so well. Unfortunately, a majority of Americans are not catching on to it. So I'm going to go through what I think are 4 important facts of the job paradigm, why it's failing, and what you do about it. I guess anyone's guess is as good as mine. I'll give you my opinion on what you do about it at the end of the video. First, I want to just let everybody know this Wednesday we're actually doing an entrepreneurship webinar at 2 p.m. Pacific time this Wednesday. It's free, and the information we're going to be sharing and revealing in that webinar stuff you could go apply right away to begin the process of becoming a value creator. Because ultimately, I think that we are going to have, I used to say we're going to have 2 classes, the elite and everybody else. But I actually think it's going to be more so of the elite, the 1% of 1%, the people that can basically steal trillions with impunity, that can get 0% lines of credit from the Fed, can speculate and go buy, $700 million worth of Andy Warhol paintings last year, that type of group. Then there's going to be, on the flip side of that, there's going to be the poor, or the former middle class, if you will, and poor lumped together. And then there's going to be a small percentage, maybe 30%, of value creators, whether they are entrepreneurs, whether they're professionals, whatever it is. They're the group that's going to add actual value to society, and they'll be the ones who will actually be able to have a decent living. Now, they're not going to be rolling around maybe in the Rolls-Royce Wrath or Rolls-Royce Phantom, but they will still have the ability to be self-reliant, to self-sustain their lifestyle, as opposed to a overwhelming majority of Americans. So 4 points. The first one I'll start with is just the job market. Now, Forbes wrote a great article not long ago, actually 2 great articles that I'll source here, or that I'll talk about here. The first one was the labor participation rate. I've talked about this before. May not come as a shocker to you. Over 92 million Americans are out of the labor pool. They've opted out. Okay, they're out of it, meaning that there's not jobs for them. Now, some of those, yes, are retiring seniors, but many of them, in fact, the biggest demographic in this, are millennials that have opted out, cannot find a job. Okay, that is a huge statistic.
Done for. Stick a fork in them.
The biggest, highest rate, and I think it's like 35, 36 years. Now, why is this happening? Well, the politicians will tell you, well, we need to, print more money. We need a jobs bill. No, it's because the economy is. My next point, which is robots, automation, applications. It's fundamentally changing. In fact, I talked about this maybe in a video last week. I surely talked about it on my podcast. The Washington Post had a story about how something like 65% of the jobs that will exist in 10 years, they're not even around today. And most of the jobs that we have today, in fact, they said over half of them will be replaced by a robot or by some form of automation. And people are completely ignorant of this. It's like I said before, I remember, end of last year, there was the fast food strikes that were taking place where they wanted $15 an hour. And in some places like Seattle, they got the $15 an hour.
Yeah, it's amazing how you look at the automation of a lot of industries across the board and how these jobs are just not going to exist in 10 years, because if you can get a computer or if you can get some type of robot to do the job that a human can do, why employ a person? I mean, it's just amazing. A lot of people are just not aware of the industries that are just going to completely go away as a result of this automation. Go ahead.
And of course, the unions are pushing this. The union bosses that basically line and pad their pockets with money, the more people they get on the union dole. What they're not telling you is that the robot French fry machine maker and hamburger maker is going to take your job anyways in a couple years. So yeah, you might get $15 an hour for maybe a couple of years, and then after that, basically you're going to be completely out. In fact, pushing for ridiculous wages, not ridiculous in the sense that it's kind of like saying, okay, the guy that makes French fries, if it's better to pay him a higher wage, why not pay him $100 an hour if that's good for the economy? What that does as a business owner just makes him say, well, I think I'm just going to invest in the robots because I'm not going to pay the guy $15 an hour when he's maybe worth $7 an hour. See what I'm saying? Now, you might not like me saying that. That may not be something that you like to hear or want to hear. It's just a reality of how a free market economy works. Okay? It's just a reality. I didn't make the rules. So we have automation and robots replacing over half, not my figure. That's a ton of different MIT, a bunch of other, top, universities and think tanks and economic professors, all these people, over 50% of the labor pool will be replaced by robots. Here's the next one, is Obamacare. Obamacare and government entitlements in general have tipped the scale, pushed the entitlements to the tipping point where now 49%, almost 50% of Americans are on government assistance. Now, they just need to get 51% and it's game over for the Republic. I mean, it's almost game over for the Republic now. But if you've seen the movie The Gangs of New York, this is kind of what it's like. Okay, remember when the Irish immigrants would get off the ships, you'd have the people from Tammany Hall, the politicians, would give them bread and free stuff. In fact, many times through the movie, the guy that, the politician from Tammany Hall, he's like, we need as many immigrants as we can because they're going to vote for us. And we got to make sure we, make them voters. Right? That's exactly what the psychopathic left and many Republicans today, that's what they believe as well. They're like, yeah, just open the borders up, let them all in, because we need more voters. You see, if they control the population with entitlements, it's over. And that's the plan. It's so freaking obvious, right? They want
Cloward and Priven strategy.
To remove the equation of self-reliance from the picture. They want to remove that component from the equation and make it where, well, I can't do it myself. I need government. It is so abundantly clear. And you know what? For some people, maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want their life run by big government. I don't want my life.
It's amazing that in the past 3 years, there's a lot of people that I know personally, people I care about, people that, I have concerns for, that have completely fallen out of the job paradigm, that can't find work, that's unemployable, because you got to understand, from an HR perspective, from a new hire perspective, when you're recruiting an employee, they have functionality. I'm not talking about these McDonald's jobs, Walmart jobs. You can get them jobs all day long. I'm talking about living wage jobs. If you're out of the job market for, let's say, 6 months to a year, you're not hireable anymore. The only option that you have is a Mickey D's job or a stock job or something like that. But you're not going to get a living wage job after you've dropped out of the labor force for a certain amount of time, because they consider you they consider your skill set to be obsolete at that point in time. So you're no longer employable. And again, the only job that you can get is these low wage minimum paying jobs. But let's go on.
Life run by big government. I want to teach my kids to not have their life run by big government, and the way you do it is by being able to opt out of this insanity, because that's what it is. And it's like no one's holding up a sign saying, hey, the job paradigm is scary and it's freaking coming to an end. No, the majority of Americans will find out when it's too late to do something about it. Last point real quick is a college paradigm, another paradigm on itself. Over $1 trillion in student loans. It is, again, 65% of the jobs today won't exist in 10 years.
Again, as you speak on this stuff, working directly with directors of HR. Now, the director of HR oversees the HR department. They oversee all hiring and firing. People may think that, your boss hires and fires you. No, that's the job and responsibility of the HR department. That's what they're there for. When you get laid off by the HR department. You don't get laid off per se by your boss. You're escorted out by the HR department and security or whatever, but that's how that works. And, talking to these HR directors, and they want experience. They don't want somebody that, have a degree in worthlessness. But, you see all of these people going to school with these worthless degrees, and it's sad, but let's go on.
We're preparing kids in college today for those jobs. They're not going to have a job in 10 years. You know how many college kids I've met that work at Starbucks that have over $100,000 in debt? A lot of them. Because, I go to Starbucks or I'll go to a coffee place and I'll start talking to people. And they'll say, oh, I graduated from college. Oh, yeah, what'd you get? Oh, well, I got a bachelor's in Native American pottery making. I'm like, oh, great. What school? How much did it cost? So I start talking to them. And it's incredible to me. Really, it is. Because we are, not we, but the criminal government and the people in the financial industry and all these other people, not all of them, but a good portion of them, with brilliant marketing, continue to push a message of here's a life plan for you, here's a great thing to do in your life that will help you, that's 30, 40 years old, and it's not working anymore. And it's so clear, at least to me, I hope to many of you as well. So that'll do it for the scary future of the job paradigm. Now the solution, my solution, look, there could be a lot of solutions. I could be totally wrong. Love to hear what you have to say about what you think solutions are. I think you got to be in the value creator space. Doesn't mean you got to be an online entrepreneur. Doesn't mean you got to be a real estate investor. There's countless ways where you could add value. Those that add value, add a lot of value. If you look at people that do really well in your own lifestyle, many of them are adding value in some capacity or another. The more value you add, the more financial compensation you get in return. You see how it works? Pretty simple. So think of ways that you could add value to society. Think about ways that you could add value to your community. And that's what makes real free market capitalism so exciting, is that there's still that opportunity. Look, with all of the bad crap that I just talked about, I still believe we're at the golden age of business. I still believe there's tremendous opportunity for those that are willing to take it. Because so few are taking it, there's more for those that do take it. You see what I'm saying? So that'll do it for me. Again, remember this Wednesday, 2.
Now, again, this guy, he talks about this stuff a lot, and it drives home the point that not only do you have to think differently about the future, not only, we talk about the concept of not having a mortgage, and so therefore you should own your land, or not going to the store to be dependent on their food. But we need to talk a little bit more about and just follow and just create ideas for creating value. I mean, everybody that I know, the people that I listen to, they create value, and they work, but they ain't got no job. And so, it's a whole big ball game, a big different ball game when it comes to that. And, the idea is that, following their lead, following these cats' leads, because personally, I think they know what they're talking about. And the main point also is that, at the end of the day, They ain't got a job and I do.